Hey everybody, Claire here, and today I have the lovely Shira from shirard.com.
Hey guys.
And so we thought it'd be really fun to do one on mommy health, because I feel like this is an area where there are so many myths, and women, just because, I just think because when you're a mom, it's especially a new mom, it's a new experience, and you're getting a lot of advice that was unsolicited, and you're hearing a lot of things, and at least in my experience with my friends who are, young or new moms, I notice that they're really quick to punish themselves or to feel guilty about something that maybe they don't need to feel guilty about. Yeah, and a lot of it's health related.
As women, we're so hard on ourselves, and I work with a lot of moms, and it's one of those things that so many moms think that they could always be doing something more and all of that. And so this is kind of just about kind of separating fact from fiction and making it more digestible.
So the first one is truth or myth, pregnancy is a food free-for-all, because I'm eating for two.
So I want to be so delicate about this because, again, people are so, with all the kind of media around, so-and-so's post-baby body and all of that, there's so much kind of shaming and all of that. But the short answer is no. The interesting thing about it is, if you think about it as 3 trimesters, the first you actually don't need any additional calories. That's not, you do need additional, like certain nutrients, but you don't need any more calories. And then in the second trimester, you need about like 350-ish more. And so if you think about it, that's, like an avocado is like 300-ish calories. Or, so you are eating something more, but it's not like, a huge amount more.
This makes me sad because that was literally my number one thing.
This is your like, I was like,
you know what the great thing about pregnancy is gonna be? Is just eating all the food. Backing up the fried chicken truck.
Yeah, you're like, keep it coming, keep it coming.
All the chocolate.
and again, and this varies based on, if you were kind of underweight before or a little bit, on either end of that. And then the third trimester, it's about like 450-ish. So that's like a little more.
That's like a meal.
That's something special.
But I will say, I think the main takeaway here is that it's not just like calories.
Yeah, it's not.
It's a balance of, well, you need this much more protein and this much more of these nutrients and blah, blah, blah.
It is not a calorie free for all, but enjoy. Like that being said, like enjoy what you're eating. And
I mean, I think that it's such a, like, being pregnant is an emotionally trying time.
Yeah.
And if you, like, I'm a very emotional eater, and I feel like if you need to give yourself that space to indulge a little bit,
absolutely.
You should get that space.
Do it, and but enjoy it, like everything, especially because you're not going to be drinking and things like that. Really sit down and enjoy it.
Yeah, and actually this is, I'm sort of on that topic. What about exercise?
If you're already doing an exercise regularly, continue doing that, but you wouldn't want to start a new exercise.
Okay.
Like if you weren't a CrossFitter, then like pregnancy isn't the right time to start.
I hear you. But if, for instance, like, so let's pretend it's me.
Yeah.
And I don't really exercise, but I also am nervous of but I also will be the person who really enjoys those extra 450 to possibly 1,000 extra calories, depending on how I'm feeling. What exercise could I start if I wanted to kind of keep my body healthy, try to build a little bit of core strength, that kind of thing?
I think for you, for someone like you, it would be kind of, like the light, like yoga stuff,
like
walking.
Pilates.
Pilates is great, but interesting, you definitely want core strength, but you don't want in that time to kind of make your abs super tight.
Right.
Because
that is a vision of like a belly but with 6 packs.
Yeah, and I've seen that on the internet, and it was terrifying. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but like, no.
That can't exist in nature.
The reason why is because it can tear the muscles, like if they're too tight. And so I actually had a Pilates instructor in New York who was working with a pregnant woman. I was always like, asking all these questions, and she would massage the the stomach to kind of try and separate naturally, because you want it then to come back together. I would, just be careful about it. And that's kind of another reason why I think they say not to kind of jump into this crazy intense thing. But that being said, yeah, like light walks, yoga, Pilates, things like that, like light, light, nice stuff.
Totally. But if, for instance, you were like a marathon runner and then got pregnant, like I know women who have run like miles a day up until the 3rd trimester.
Yeah, and I think that's beautiful.
So the next question is, why do you have to avoid these? This is me asking because I've always been like,
this is outrageous.
Yeah. So why do you have to avoid these when pregnant? And do you actually have to avoid them when pregnant? Sushi, seafood, just as in general, alcohol, cheese, salami and deli meat, coffee, cold pressed juice. And is this just like before you give birth, or do you have to maintain this after you give birth?
So the reality is that pregnancy is a time when you have suppressed immunity. So one of the reasons that you're kind of eliminating these things that you have a higher risk for like a foodborne disease is because you are at greater risk for infection. And if you get sick, then, it can affect kind of if you have to go on antibiotics, stuff like that. The other reason is that there are certain things that can kind of cross the placenta line. And so in that case, it's very dangerous because, if there's some kind of foodborne illness, which, it can be in, certain like soft cheeses.
Okay.
Or like raw, like sushi.
Okay.
Exactly. Same thing with like deli meats. But in terms of cheese, it's not all cheese. It's just the ones that are really soft. And so the unpasteurized, you're not going to do like unpasteurized cheese or like the soft cheeses. The thing with, there's another layer to this, and it may seem like kind of a bummer, but leftovers is a big deal because I know, but the only thing you have to remember is that like you have to heat it up.
Okay.
Because there are certain kind of bacteria, like bad bacteria, that can actually live on like surfaces and in the fridge and stuff like that. So in that case, you just kind of want to knock that out. And then with that also, you want to make sure that your meats are cooked, kind of like.
Wait, are you saying like, can I order my steak medium rare?
I would say medium rare is fine. I just wouldn't like the full pink.
Okay, you just wouldn't go rare.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the other thing is fish that are known to be higher in mercury.
Yeah, so no tuna.
No tuna or like swordfish, and there's a couple others that that aren't great. And then with alcohol, people vary on this. And I'm not a doctor, I am a nutritionist, and I think that, people in Europe, have a little bit here. The party line for, I think, pediatricians and doctors is, there's no safe amount. But, I think that that's something that you kind of have to decide if you're gonna like thinking about having like a couple sips here and there. That you have to decide on your own, like with your pediatrician and your partner and all of that,
That makes sense. So I think I've also heard that with alcohol that there's certain times in the pregnancy where it's also, maybe, I don't know if maybe this is with you as well, where like in the 1st trimester, it's super important, but in the 3rd trimester,
it's pretty cooked.
They're mostly cooked, so it's not as much of an issue.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. A pregnancy is a time of rapid development, and the beginning is like when all their little like organs are coming together and all of that. And so that's probably not when I would recommend, experimenting, but towards the later is definitely where it would be a lot more acceptable. And, we're talking like a little bit, birthday, a couple sips. Yeah.
Totally. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool.
And for afterwards.
Yes.
So afterwards, the biggies are the mercury. You're not going to want to do that. You're not going to want to have tuna or swordfish or stuff like that. It's just not worth it because those can have neurological effects on the baby.
And this is with the caveat if you're breastfeeding.
If you're breastfeeding, exactly. That's a great point. Yeah, if you're not breastfeeding, then do it. Although mercury isn't amazing for everyone. And then,
but it won't affect your baby.
It won't affect your baby, and like people love tuna and like enjoy it, in moderation. And then the other thing is with alcohol, you can certainly drink alcohol and like I encourage like have a glass. Yeah, but you want to make sure it's out of like your system. And so with that, one of the great things is like pump. pump and have kind of like a stash. And so, maybe if you get home after, having, 2 glasses of wine or something like that, you may not want to breastfeed, but you could just give your baby your pumped milk.
And then does breastfeeding really work for post-pregnancy weight loss? Because every celebrity is like, oh, I breastfed and just running around. And you're just like, really? That can't be right. I don't know. I guess everybody's different.
Yeah.
But is breastfeeding that effective?
Breastfeeding burns a lot of calories. It really does. I have a friend who I help with nutrition as well, who just had a baby, and she was telling me that she's almost, she's been breastfeeding 2 months, and she is almost like kind of back. She's definitely like softer and wants to do kind of resistance training and stuff like that, but it burns a lot of calories for sure.
So kind of a continuation of that, what is the best way for a new mom to lose baby weight? Like, so let's say maybe she can't breastfeed, or she's done with the breastfeeding portion. Like, what would you recommend is a good safe way for someone to lose weight?
You want to make sure, because you are kind of, your day is kind of erratic, that you're kind of thinking about food in a way of, maybe you're not sitting down to a full meal, but maybe you're keeping track in kind of your head of what that kind of looks like. Because I do think it's easy, especially in having friends and clients who are in that period where you're a really new mom and kind of the days blend together and stuff like that, making sure you're probably not sitting down to a regular meal, but kind of that all the little like grazing and snacking kind of adds up to what would have been a balanced meal. And the other thing I would say is that, a lot of times people want to help and people want to be, there and get you something and whatever. And if you feel comfortable delegating, be like, listen, I would love, like, come over, and if you could, like, I would love lunch, like, if we could have lunch together, and, something like that, where it's kind of like everyone kind of wants to come together and support a new mom. So it's one of those ways that I think is a really nice way to actually be helpful. It's like a very logistical thing that your friends and family can help with.
So now they've grown up a little bit.
Yep.
So what are some tips for parents with picky eaters?
Up until the age of about 6 or 7, all kids, and that's on like a normal developmental scale, have the ability to self-regulate hunger. And what that means is really that when a kid is physiologically full, they'll stop eating, which is why you'll see like a little kid eat half a cupcake or something like that, where no adults would do that. And what happens is as we get older, we're kind of socialized into, eating when, we had a bad day at school, or we had to go to the doctors, or someone broke up with us, or, as kind of this thing because it's someone's birthday, and in school it's someone's birthday like every other week. Yeah. And so we lose that ability as we get older, but when kids are young, they still have that ability. So what that means is that kids go through stages of growing really rapidly, in which case they're really hungry, or growing not that rapidly, and so they're not that hungry. And a lot of parents take that time when they're not growing rapidly and not so hungry to mean that they're picky eaters. And so what happens with that is, of course, kind of the maternal or nurturing parental thing is like, oh my God, you're not hungry, what will you eat? Oh God. And they get a lot of attention for it. And kids are really smart, and so they'll be like, well, I will eat a cookie. And it makes sense, right? And it happens a lot when it's the second kid, the older kid, and there's a new one coming in. It's their way of kind of getting attention and stuff like that. So if you let it go far, then the kids are getting so much attention, and it makes sense. And so I would say watch out for that. And one of the best kind of things of advice with that is that you lay out breakfast, and you're like, this is breakfast. And if your kid doesn't want it, then you're like, okay, well, I'll leave it out for this certain amount of time, and then goodbye breakfast, and then there's a snack. And if you don't want snack, I guarantee you they're eating lunch. And on top of that, I would say that, the research shows that it takes like 10 to 15 exposures for a kid to be open to a new food. Really, the thing that is, I think, so hard but so good is just to kind of be neutral about food. Where if your kid isn't eating, you're not making such a big deal about it. You're like, okay, well, this is breakfast and everyone else is eating, but if you don't want it, then okay, like there's the next meal.
I love that. I love the idea of the kid not being like allowed to hold everyone else's mealtime hostage.
And if you give the kid too much power, it's actually not even good for them because it's not great for, them interacting with other people. And it kind of shows them that they're the boss, but they're not. They're a kid.
Yeah, they're not the best.
Yeah, so don't be a short order cook and all of that stuff, which is so, of course, it's that kind of maternal, nurturing thing, but you got this.
Yeah. So what are some tips for setting family wellness goals?
The first thing I would say is, and this is the same thing I would say for an individual, which is that don't try and do everything at once. Because I think that that's overwhelming, and I think a lot of people do that. I have people who are like, well, every day this week I'm gonna work out or something like that. And then if they don't do it, then they feel like they failed. And then the other thing, especially, and we talk about this a lot of times with, maybe if one child in the family is kind of struggling with, being overweight or something like that, make it a whole family thing.
I love that.
Yeah, instead of making it about the one kid, because the last thing kids want to do is feel different.
Well, and I think additionally, it's one thing to talk about like childhood obesity, but there's also the other end of it, which is that sometimes kids go through growth spurts that are horizontal before they're vertical.
Totally, before puberty and all of that.
Exactly. So, like that happened to every kid in my family. Everybody went through a chubby phase.
Yeah.
And I think it's also one of those things of, if you want your kids to live a healthy lifestyle, you kind of have to walk the walk.
Yeah, you do.
You do. And it's like a bummer because it's like, I'd rather hang out and catch up on my Netflix and stuff like that. But, things like having like a Sunday morning family walk.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. It's so nice because, your kids will, really look up to you and they'll model you. And, if you're showing them that you're eating, vegetables at every meal or lunch and dinner meals, then, it will make it more kind of natural for them to gravitate to that stuff as well. So I think, do it as a family and, show by example. And then it's a lot easier to kind of wrestle with the conversations that come after that.
Well, this was awesome. Thank you.
So much fun.
I know. Thank you so much for all your amazing just mom health tips. These are great.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and please put your comments and questions below.
Yeah.
Like, we'd love to do another one of these. Wealth of knowledge over here. So just like put questions down there.
This is so fun. No, ask your questions. It's been great.
This is so fun.
Thank
it's so
you
good
so
to
much.
see you. And remember, ShiraRD.com. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
Bye.